I'm so excited. We talk about this every single year. The OU football, that's king in this state. That's where our fandom originated. But when you talk about just one of the best fan bases, one of the best teams, coaches, programs to follow, it doesn't get any better than what Patty Gasso and this OU softball program has built over the last 20 plus years. So let's just kind of dive right into it, Adam. Obviously, a lot of new faces, new challenge, new schedule this year with this OU softball squad. Let's just kind of dive into it, man. No Jocelyn Allo. You lose some pitching from a year ago. The one of the things that Patty Gasso prides herself on year in and year out is testing her team early in the non-conference schedule. Very tough slate to get things going right away the first month or so of the season. But let's just kind of dive into it, man. Let's start with the pitching staff. Jenna Roach's group, and you put this in the outline, Adam, and I think that you've got a pretty good case to be made. I think that Oklahoma this season, ultimately, we'll see how it plays out. But just on paper, with what Oklahoma has got in that pitching staff, I think a case is to be made that this could possibly go down as being one of the greatest pitching staffs of all time. Certainly one of the best collective staffs in OU softball history.
Definitely. You got Jordy Ball leading things off there. She was pretty much unstoppable as a true freshman. You got Nicole May, a name that I think a lot of people thought might transfer before last year, maybe even after this year, to have more of a premier role at pretty much any program outside of OU in the entire nation. And then you add Alex Storako out of Michigan, a strong softball program in Michigan, one of the few out of the and that is pretty strong. She's going to come in. You've got three pretty solid, to elite level pitchers that could be, the dominant arm at pretty much anywhere else in the country. And we're stacking them all here together at OU. And things just look, it used to be, you had one pitcher that kind of carried your team, even as little as 10 years ago. And now Patty's got her program to the point where she could literally roll out three different starters on a weekend, rest everybody's arms, put Jordy Ball into the hitting lineup on her off day. The strength out of this pitching staff is incredible.
Well, when you start with Jordy Ball, you're talking about the best pitcher in college softball. Not many true freshmen have gone through and got to experience what Jordy did a season ago. She won a national championship, pitched in the biggest moments on this stage. But I think, Adam, probably the thing that's got me the most excited about Jordy Ball, not necessarily the growth that she's going to make from year one to year two, but it's the fact that she's healthy. And I think that that's going to make a lot of Oklahoma fans smile. The forearm is healed. She's ready to go. And one of the things that's going to be so nice, you talked about how deep, this pitching staff is as a whole. We're not going to be forced to trot Jordy out there, 2 out of 3 games every single week. And you're going to be able to kind of slowly progress her as the season goes on. Let her kind of get back in form. That way, once you get into Big 12 conference play, and once you start looking towards regionals and postseason, then you're starting to see peak Jordy Ball firing on all cylinders. But just going down the list, man, Nicole May, we all know what this girl's capable of. She's a veteran here at the University of Oklahoma. Pat even said in her news conference yesterday, she feels like Nicole May's best season is coming, and that kicks off here in just a few more days. Alex Storako, experience, dominant in the Big Ten, and, Adam, you look at the stats on what Miss Storako has done in her last 2 years at Michigan in the circle. 47-11, 1.38 ERA, 99 walks, just a few strikeouts, Adam. 570 Ks in 2 seasons for Mr. Rocco at Michigan. And then, by the way, there's pitchers 1, 2, and 3. We're going to round it out with the number one player, the number one overall player in the softball class of 2022, and that's Kirsten Deal, the southpaw. So much raw talent. When you think about southpaws and Oklahoma softball, some of the greatest pitchers in college softball history come to mind. Parker, Lowry, Ricketts. Kirsten Deal has a chance. She's got all the raw talent. She's got all the skills and the ability with Jenna Roach and Patty Gasso able to coach and develop her. I think you're going to start seeing KD as being the future next, great lefty southpaw in an Oklahoma softball uniform. And all 4 of these pitchers can help in significant ways throughout this season. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch how not just these girls pitch, but how does Patty manage this pitching staff? That way she's able to maximize and keep these girls not just fresh, but keep them, sharp, 110%. Let's look at the lineup, because as good as the pitching staff is, the lineup might just be that much better. And, we all talk about losing Jocelyn Allo a year ago. How's Oklahoma going to figure out a way to produce runs, to hit the long ball? You go down this lineup, Adam, I do not see any weaknesses 1 through 9. This might be Patty's deepest and best lineup that she's had since she took over in Norman.
Yeah, you look up and down the lineup and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we get this player in that hit double digit home runs at a different
Hmm.
school that transferred to OU, and now you're like, okay, we got to fit her in the lineup somewhere, but where's the opening? Because there's so much talent just oozing out of out of this roster, and I think you kind of alluded to it there with the pitching. There's so much depth in the pitching staff that now you can add Jordy Ball's bat to the lineup, one that we didn't really get a full taste of last year, but she's
Hmm.
an elite hitter. At least she was in high school, and I'm excited to see what she might be able to do behind the plate when she's not pitching. I think she probably figures into right field in some scenario there, but
Hmm.
you've got elite lineup here, and defensively, right up the middle, Grace Lyons and Tiare Jennings, great hitters, but
Hmm.
absolute stalwarts defensively that they're going to help raise those stats that you just gave for Alex Tarraco and all the other pitchers, make them look even better. So yeah, I don't really know where the holes in the lineup really are.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about Tiare Jennings and Grace Lyons, that's the best middle infield duo, both defensively and swinging the bat as well, that you're going to find anywhere in the country in college softball. Kinsey Hansen, coming back. I know that Patty Gasso and that coaching staff is expecting a lot of things. Kinsey kind of struggled a little bit last year, was dealing with some injury problems, but she was able to close her season out in a big way in Oklahoma City at the College World Series. She's back for another season, and I think that you're going to see some flexibility with how well rounded this roster is. Patty's talked all offseason about how she's forcing her girls to, there's so much competition on this team, 1 through 20 on this roster. She's forcing these girls to be able to learn and master 2, 3, even sometimes 4 positions. That way you can figure out a way to get your best 9 on the field at all times. But we all talk about Tiare Jennings, the captain, Grace Lyons. And I want to talk a little bit about the 2 transfers. Maybe a couple newcomers OU fans aren't are going to be too familiar with when they trot out here starting this weekend. Sydney Sanders, who many people peg her as being the kind of the replacement first baseman for OU once the season gets underway. Transferred from Arizona State, 2022 All-American. She was Pac-12 Freshman of the Year last season, hit 425 with 21 home runs. She's bringing a fellow Arizona State teammate with her in what many people expect to occupy that left field position in Elena Torres. First team All Pac-12, a true utility player in every sense of the word. She can play 3, 4, even sometimes 5 positions. She's fully capable of doing so at a high level. And then, we all know about Jada Coleman hitting 435 in her career through her first 2 seasons in an Oklahoma uniform. She's the Energizer Bunny. She's the spark plug of this group. She's the straw that stirs the drink. And then you talk about the designated player. We were able to get a really, really nice addition to this team out of the College Station area, and that is designated player Haley Lee. First team All SEC a year ago, a true power hitter in every sense of the word, with 40 home runs over the last 2 seasons. This lineup from top to bottom, Adam, it's just scary. And I love this quote from Patty Gasso, what we got yesterday at her press conference when she was asked about her lineup and potentially how dangerous this could be for opposing teams pitching. And this was her quote. She said, "You can probably predict the lineup 1 and 2 is going to be Jada Coleman and Tiare Jennings. But then after that, boom, 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 boom. And then you've got Riley Boone, who can also boon." So you look at this lineup, Adam, can you replace Jocelyn Allo's production level from the last 3 or 4 seasons? No, of course not. But even though she's the best hitter in the history of the sport, Tiare Jennings, who I know you have been on this bandwagon for the last couple of seasons, she's kind of outpacing Jocelyn in a lot of hitting statistical categories. So when you look at this lineup 1 through 9, it's as scary and as deep as any lineup Patty Gasso has had since she's been the softball coach at Oklahoma.
Yeah, Tiare Jennings, huge fan. I'm the president of the Tiare Jennings fan club, and I don't think she's underappreciated by any means. Everyone recognizes that she's an All-American, one of the elite players in all of college softball, but she does get a little bit overshadowed because she's putting up incredible numbers, but they're not the career numbers just yet because she
Mm-hmm.
just finished her second year in college. So I think people are going to start recognizing everything that she's putting together as a career this year here in Norman, and people start to understand, oh, she's pretty much just as good as Jocelyn Allo. The numbers say that if you look at them. You mentioned Haley Green, the transfer from College Station. She was kind of the one that I was wondering, like, well, where do I fit her in? Because you've already got Sydney Sanders probably at first. You've got Alyssa Brito at third in all likelihood. And she was one that really came on strong towards the end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
had some key hits. throughout the postseason. You've got Riley Boone, who you mentioned, Jada Coleman. So it's like, man, where does Haley Green fit in? She's probably the backup catcher when Kenzie Hansen, plays at
Mm-hmm.
first base. But that's insane that you've got someone that hit 15 home runs at Texas A&M last year. That's may not play a whole lot. Might be your rotational player, game to game, which it's
Mm-hmm.
great. It's you love to have that type of depth that you can give some players some days off to rest and stay fresh as you approach the postseason there.
And I thought it was really good what we heard from Patty yesterday when, because a lot of people, when you look at the statistics, a lot of people are going to try to make the comparison Tiare versus Jocelyn with what Tiare still has the capability of doing over the next 2 seasons. And Patty kind of spoke on it really, really well and was talking about, Tiare Jennings, as good as she is, she doesn't have to be Jocelyn Allo. She just has to be Tiare Jennings because Tiare is pretty damn good doing what she does each of the last 2 seasons. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Like I said, this thing starts this weekend when Oklahoma travels out to Irvine, California. They're going to face 3 top 20 teams this weekend alone in Duke, Stanford, and Washington. But before we kind of do a little bit of a brief outlook on the schedule, Adam, when you've got a team that's coming off back-to-back national championships, that's going to have a pitching staff that's probably the best on paper that Oklahoma has ever had, period, to go along with a lineup 1 through 9 that is as deadly as any lineup in college softball right now. How do you measure this year as a success? Is it national championship or bust? Is it undefeated? Where do you go from here? Because the bar is so high right now in Norman.
I think it is national championship or bust. I think that's the easy question, and I think it's actually a pretty easy answer. I think maybe the better question, and maybe what I should have put on our outline to ask here was, how do we measure whether this team is better than last year's? Because a lot of people are saying that right now. They're saying, hey, this team is more loaded than it was last year. But how do you measure that? Because OU was number one in pretty much every team category that you could measure from a statistical standpoint, and not by a small margin, by a wide margin in a lot of categories. Talking about number one in ERA at 1.05 per game, number one in scoring at 9.3 runs per game. They won 95% of their games, this past season. I think Patty's at something like 82% winning percentage for her
It's
overall
insane.
career.
Yes.
And it's only going to go up, it seems. So
yes.
I don't know how you really compare that and say, okay, well, what do you look at to say this team is better than last year's team?
Well, I think ultimately, the number one judge of success this year is going to be the wins and losses. I mean, that's top to bottom. Oklahoma is poised to win another national championship, be the first team ever to win a three-peat. But I think if you're really trying to judge how good this team is compared to the Lauren Chamberlain's group, Aaron Miller's group, Jocelyn Allo, some of the teams Oklahoma's had over the last 3 to 4 seasons. I think you're really only going to be able to compare that by judging this team's statistics as a whole over what this OU program has done each of the last 5 or 6 years. But like you said, I mean, number one in the country in ERA, number one in pretty much every single statistical category in hitting. I just simply don't know. One, it's amazing to me that Patty is able to get this amount of production consistently year after year. And, just kind of looking at this schedule outlook, man, I mean, Oklahoma was the unanimous number one team in the country. If you go by the NFCA coaches poll, OU number one, Oklahoma State at number 3, Texas coming in at number 6. So Big 12 softball, it's as good as any conference in America. We feel like we say that about most sports each of the last couple of seasons here in Big 12 countries. So, but like I said, this weekend alone, you're traveling out to Irvine, California. You want to start this thing off in a big way, go undefeated, come back home. And then Adam, you've got a challenging non-conference schedule. And I thought it was interesting that Patty talked about it yesterday when she was speaking on the fact that she pretty much said teams are scared shitless to play Oklahoma in the non-conference schedule. She said that it's been a scheduling nightmare trying to find teams to agree to play Oklahoma this year, and that's why you're going to have to see some road trips this year. OU has to play UCLA, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Florida State, Auburn. That is a very, very daunting non-conference schedule. And that's one of my favorite things that Patty does is she tests her teams early. That way she knows once conference play gets around, she knows what she has in that locker room. She knows what adjustments and little tweaks she has to make in order to win another Big 12 championship, to win another national title. And I just simply cannot wait to watch it. It's so much fun. It's my favorite fan base of this university. I'm sorry it's football, but you just go out there, man, and we don't even have the new stadium yet. And you go out there for a Tuesday game at 6 o'clock, and there's 200 people out in the parking lot tailgating at 3:30. It's that enjoyable of a sport and a team to follow. I can't wait to watch it.